Today, we become legends.
I'm sure you've all experienced the classic Smite troll teams, all magical or all physical. These teams are, of course, never optimal because of the way defense works in Smite. However, this series is specifically about exploring what the best of the worst would be and making non-optimal teams work. If you haven't seen my other videos in this series yet, such as the Pantheon teams or the class teams, I'll link those for you down below. And if you don't want to miss future teams videos like the season teams or melee versus range teams, then hit that sub button to join the Nay Nation and never miss an upload. But without further ado, let's get into this. Physical versus magical gods in Smite are relatively balanced, with 58 physical and 53 magical gods in the game currently. Despite there being 3 physical classes and 2 magical classes, the mage class is huge in Smite, and so the actual numbers remain pretty even. So this matchup should hopefully be a pretty close one. Alright, so let's do the physical team first. We're looking to create the best team for Conquest, filling all 5 roles as best we can, using only physical gods. Trying to create synergy where possible, but if not, just following generally strong meta picks right now. So let's kick this off with the ADC. This one, we of course have a ton of choice, with Hunters being the main class that sees play in the ADC role. I'm mainly looking at the top meta Hunters such as Rama, Cupid, Himdalia, Ula, Jingwei, Anhe, and others. I'd say overall I like Rama the best for this team, since he's a late game powerhouse that can shred through protections extremely effectively, which is important for an all physical team where enemies will almost certainly be stacking up a ton of physical defense. Plus, he's just one of, if not the best ADC god in the meta right now. Supporting our Rama, most of our options here are going to be from warriors, since we don't have access to guardians, the main class for support. While some assassins could work, I think the main considerations here are Hercules, Horus, Amaterasu, and maybe Guan Yu, Mulan, or Achilles if you want something more aggressive. In terms of just meta relevance and power level though, I think I have to go with Hercules here. He's a monster support in the meta right now and can really help dominate lane for our Rama and get him the lead early on that he needs, which, like I said earlier in this video, will be essential for success with an all-physical team. Horus was also a strong consideration though, and if you wanted to go a different direction with the team, I think Horus will be just as fine as well. Moving into the jungle, we're back in familiar territory with access to assassins for this role. Some top picks for the role right now would be Set, Nemesis, Pele, and Erlang Shen. Plus, I'll throw in Kali since I think she has the benefit of shredding tanks, much like an ADC, which, as I mentioned before, is critical on a team like this to prevent enemies just winning by default in the late game by spamming physical protection. This pick is incredibly difficult. Set is amazing, as is Nemesis, who also has some tank shred properties with her ultimate to remove all those defenses. Erlang and Kali can also shred through tanks extremely effectively with basic attack items. Any of these 4 picks will be solid for the team, but I think I'm going to go with Nemesis here just for that ultimate. Plus, she is somewhat AA focused and can deal with tanks decently in that way as well, but once again, any of these 4 picks would have been amazing for the team. Into the mid lane, we are lacking the primary class once again here, so we don't have truly optimal meta picks to choose from. We're mostly looking at mid lane Hunters here, plus maybe an assassin or 2. Ula, Medusa, AMC, Anhe, Neith, Skadi, Set, and Kali are my considerations. These each have different benefits and drawbacks, but I think overall I like Ula the most here. He has solid early pressure from mid and can still double into a more penetration focused build if the enemy stacks physical defense to combine with our Rama. The only worry here is that we have 3 auto attackers on the team, which is punishable, but auto attack gods are kinda essential to take down people building tons of defense, so I think it's a worth trade-off. And finally, solo lane. We have access to a large pool here with, of course, warriors, but also some assassins too that could see play here. Amaterasu is still strong and has some nice teamfight presence and objective shred to the team. King Arthur is a monster in the early to mid game that could really help win pressure for the team around the map. Wukong is a safe, reliable pick with great backline dive potential. Set is, well, Set and is always a reliable choice given a good understanding of the character, but there can only be one, and I think overall Set is just too strong to pass up. This does give us a 4th basic attack character on the team, but if the enemy are going to be building physical defense no matter what, then building Midgardian Male and Nemean instead of other physical defense probably won't matter too much in the long run. 3 block stacks won't last long against a Rama, Ula, Nemesis, and Set team anyway. So that's our physical team. Rama Hercules duo lane, Nemesis jungle, Ula mid, and Set solo. This team is pretty balanced overall, with good pressure from Ula and Hercules to run the map early on, combined with strong late game in the Rama and Nemesis, topped off with arguably the best god in the game right now coming from solo lane. But how do they compete against a magical team? Let's see. So you might think that with magicals only having 2 classes instead of 3, they would be at a huge disadvantage here, but when you consider that mages in Smite have subclasses within the class, it becomes a bit more even. You have standard burst mages, healers, ADC mages, and even magical assassins all within one class. They're by far the most diverse in the game. So let's jump in with the ADC pick. The options here are pretty simple, just the 4 magical ADCs: Freya, Kronos, Olorun, and Sol. Freya and Olorun are simply better than the other two, and I think of these two, I like Olorun a bit more. He has a stronger teamfight presence with that ultimate, and just generally seems like the stronger meta pick right now. He has fallen from grace since the glory days of Ring of Hecate, but I think he still deserves this spot. In support, we obviously have all the Guardians to work with, so we should have no problem choosing Yemoja for this one. Nah, I kid, there are definitely options for this slot beyond just Yemoja OP XD, and I think the main one I'm thinking of here is my channel mascot, the Kappa King himself. Not only is Kuzenbo an extremely strong meta support with great disruption and teamfight presence, he also has built-in thorns to counter auto attackers, which, as we've seen from the physical team, are very prevalent in single damage teams, so Kuzenbo it is for support. Moving into the jungle, we only really have a couple of options here, those being Ao Kuang and Hebo. Some Guardians are decent as well, but I think these two are probably stronger than most of the Guardians. They're sort of two ends of the spectrum here, with Ao Kuang being able to shred tanks and put out a bit more sustained damage, while Hebo just nukes one target and is kinda done for the teamfight. I do lean towards Ao Kuang for similar reasons as the physical team led towards Nemesis though. He has strong tank shred plus an execute, which inherently is more useful against tanks or just people building defense in general, since it doesn't matter how much defense you have, this will just kill you. So Ao Kuang it is for jungle. So for mid, I'm sure you all have a little someone or 3 in mind, since I haven't said she's banned yet. Yeah, it's the Morrigan. I'm not a fan of banning her since I think she is a legitimate character that just happens to be very OP in these formats of video. Of course, we're picking her almost solely for her ultimate ability that will allow you to have a physical god on your magical team for 10 seconds. That kind of effect can't be overstated, since the enemy can't just spam magical defense and win. They do have to watch out for a Mori transform into their hunter or assassin that will just nuke them if they're building 0 physical defense. In this way, she either forces the enemy team to build non-optimally or risk losing teamfights to her ultimate. She also brings some decent burst damage to teamfights with her base kit, but let's not kid ourselves, she's here because of the ultimate. And finally, our magical solo laner. Guardians are pretty successful here, as well as a handful of mages, so we should get a decent pick here. Cthulhu, Sobek, and Terra are probably the strongest 3 right now, and while Cthulhu does risk getting burned by kin size due to his extreme HP, I think he is still just the best pick for the role right now, and I'm gonna go with him. He does great in lane, and that teamfight presence is just something else when he ults. So the Great Dreamer joins the squad. And that's our magical team. Olorun, Kuzenbo duo lane, Ao Kuang jungle, Morrigan mid, and Cthulhu solo. So let's finish off this video by pitting these two teams against each other to determine a winner. So these two teams are incredibly even in my view. Physicals have some amazing anti-defense stacking potential with double hunter plus nemesis ult. Not to mention insane structure and objective presence. You don't want to let this team anywhere near Fire Giant in the late game or it will be gone in 10 seconds. Plus, they just have great meta picks in almost every role. Mid is the only role here that doesn't have one of the top 3 gods for said role in the meta right now. Magicals, however, have a direct counter to those hunters in the form of Kuzenbo, while also having solid objective and structure presence in the Olorun and Ao Kuang, and a much stronger frontline than the physicals with the Kuzenbo Cthulhu combo. Plus, they of course have the ace up their sleeve with the Morrigan's ultimate. It's also worth noting that most of the anti-auto attack items in the game are physical defense related, like Nemean and Midgardian Mail. Plus, if you did want an Emperor's Armor, you can't really pick that up against this team without being incredibly inefficient. This is an insanely close matchup, probably the hardest one to call out of all of my videos in this series so far, but I think I have to give the edge ever so slightly to Magicals. The Morrigan ult really pushes them over the edge here. If the physicals are an 8 out of 10, Magicals would be a 7.5 without Mori's ult, but that boosts them up to an 8.5 in my opinion and just pushes them over the finish line. So that's my final answer. If you want to meme around with a team of all 1 damage type, this is the one I recommend to game the system as much as possible and eke out those Ws. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more from this series, then subscribe so you don't miss those coming soon, and drop a like before you leave, and I'll catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.